You notice after the skins were put on and the door was formed and fitted, left us with some pretty serious gaps. And of course the only way to tighten those up was to add some filler. See, it's a pretty good gap across the top. It's probably about 3/8 of an inch maybe. You want to get that down to about 3/32, make it nice tight fit. It's a pretty good sized gap right there. Anyway, I'm going to do this left side first. What I'm doing is basically one dimension at a time, or one angle at a time. I'll do this end, the door jamb, then maybe the top or the bottom, and then finish out with this forward area up here. This is very critical up here because this door has to open up and clear right here. So it's really easier to bring the car to the door than the door to the car, and then it won't affect the ultimate clearance when this door is open and comes up to here. I'm going to be using DuraGlass. This is a resin, fiberglass resin and bondo mixture. It's super strong and it dries real quick. What I'll do is insulate the door jamb with some saran wrap, and I'll just line that down. Line that down through here, and you can get an idea what the gap looks, or the edge looks like so far. What I did, I went around with an angle grinder and some 45 grit or 40 grit paper, and just ground it up pretty good all up through there so that the filler will stick real nice. And I'll apply that on this edge nice and thick, and basically just shut the door. And once I shut the door, I'll smear it in and kind of level it out on the outside, let it harden up, then open the door, and I'll have a dimension that I can trim back from. Very important to prep this surface all the way around and actually get the edge a little bit too, because then your filler is going to wrap around just a little bit, and then when you ultimately sand. So I'll do all 4 surfaces first and get my gaps, and then I'm going to start doing my surfaces from body panel to body panel and leveling those up with some different kind of bondo, some more smoother, easier to work with type bondo. You see what I've done here? I put the saran wrap along this left edge right here. Just laid it out over the door jamb to protect the insulator from the bondo and filler. So you can see when the door is shut, I can just pack in the filler all around this edge. It's going to give me 0 clearance, which is what I want, and it won't stick to the door jamb. So now now I'm ready to put the bondo in. You want to make sure you prep the surface first. I use acetone. It's the best for fiberglass. Get any oils, any excess dust off that surface, and it softens it just a little bit too temporarily. I believe it allows the filler to stick to it much better. Make sure you clean that really well first. A nice amount of filler here on my mixing board. You want to use a white cream hardener with this. Of course, always knead the hardener before you use it, because a lot of times it will settle out. This stuff, depending on the temperature and how much of this hardener that you use, will determine how soon that it sets up. But I like to work with it pretty quickly. I usually just put one line down through the middle of my amount. After you get the hang of it, you can kind of do it by color. Kind of tell if you've got enough or not. You definitely want to have enough, because if it doesn't harden, you're screwed. Anyway, mix it up. Once you have it mixed really well, you're ready to put it onto the surface. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bunch on this edge first and build this up, just to make sure I have all the pits in my, I've got a few cracks and things like that. I've got to fill those up first. So I want to make sure that those are definitely filled totally. And after that, I just start applying it to the surface. a nice thick blob right there. Break off just a little more. Just kind of do a few inches at a time. Not worried about getting it just right because you can always sand it all off later. But definitely want to make sure that I get full surface coated. After I shut the door, then I'm going to be able to massage some more in there. Nice layer on there. I'm just going to shut the door. You can see how it's kind of just pushed out. A lot of excess there. I'm just going to massage that. Hopefully get it on there for. It's only been about 3 minutes and it's already set up on me. It's already tacking up. Once it tacks up, you do not want to touch it at all. Anyway, just let it do its thing there for a few minutes. Basically what you just done is just filled the gap. And then after it's hardened, I'll open up the door and I'll have a dimension to work with. All this stuff will be sanded away. And then basically you're going to come back with some smooth body filler after this anyhow, so what you're doing is just basically filling the gap. Alright, it's been about 7, 8, 10 minutes now since I first put that on there. It's nice and hard. You want to kind of, you can see that it kind of flakes off. So I'm going to go ahead and open the door. Let's see. Now I got to pull the saran wrap off. I got a lot of flash on there to remove. You definitely want to start getting that stuff off there now. This stuff has sort of a waxy type surface on it, so you want to use some old paper or something like that just to knock that off, or a zip wheel. Just break off the pieces there. Here's what it looks like after I've knocked down all the excess. You can see where I sanded with some 36 grit. I just basically used a flat board and just went in there and just ripped it down. You know, I don't really care at this point in time if I go low. In fact, I want to go a little bit low. And the first thing I did was just take down all of this. You can see how much thickness there is there. This is still a little bit low, which is what I want. This surface here is higher, so you notice I did not trim the end yet, so I got still almost a zero gap in my door jamb there. In fact, I'm probably going to work on this door jamb a little bit and bring that this way to sharpen this corner, but I want to keep that low and basically just roughed it out, because I'm going to come back and smear the final bondo. The finishing bondo is going to get smeared to level these surfaces up. And when I smear that across there, I don't want it oozing into any kind of a gap. So I'm going to keep that gap tight. Really, that'll be. I learned from doing the other door that it's much easier to keep, do those gaps last, because it's a lot easier to take it down than it is to add more on. So I want to level the surfaces first, and then I'll come back and finish off and get my gap widths on all 4 surfaces. So 1 down and 3 more corners to go as far as filling these gaps in. It's looking good so far. Here's what it looks like on the inside. You can see I did browned out some of that here on the inside. That was kind of hanging over because that stuff oozed way out in there. So I'm just gouged a bunch of it out to get it out of the way for now. As you can see, it's really heavy all up in there, and I'll wait till the door comes off to work that inner door, just like it did on the other door. It's quite thick. It still has a glossy surface on there because I haven't machined that down. You can see the ripples in it, and that's from the impression that the cellophane made, or the saran wrap. was my insulator. You can see the dark green, that's because that hasn't been machined yet. Like I said before, I'm gonna leave that pretty much to last. And I think I'm gonna level my exterior bottle panels first, and then I'll come back and machine that. So that's gonna be quite down the road. Alright, finally we're done, and it took me about 4 hours, I would say, to get to this point. I've done all 4 sides, and you can see how nice and tight it is. Big difference in where I started. And all I'm doing is just filling up the gap with some of the strongest material that I can use, with the exception of using some fiberglass paste. I mean, you could do that, but that stuff it just dries so hard. It's hard to work with. It takes longer to dry. This Duraglass is probably half the strength of fiberglass, maybe more. It's actually got fiberglass resin in it. As you can see, that's super tight. So now I'll be able to use that tight fit to contour or blend my body panels to one another. Once I figure out, you know, which one's high, which one's low. But at least got the gap of the door filled in, and I got that tight gap. So when I do skim coat that, I'm going to get very little that's going to squeeze in between that gap. So the last thing I'll do is basically sand machine the opening that I want, and I can get it perfect. But for now, I've got a nice base to work with. I just roughed everything down with mostly some 36 grit. But after about 2 or 3 minutes of that stuff setting up, you don't want to act too quickly, because you can basically flake it all off your bond and just destroy your bond. But you can use this cheese grater type little tool, which works great, and just quickly machine all the rough stuff off. And you can see the huge flakes that it creates, but it really gets that rough stuff off there, especially the stuff that oozes out on the inside. I'm not worried about cleaning this up too much on this inside here, but it oozes out really thick on the inside. Once I remove the door, which is down the road, I'll be finishing this inside surface, and then of course after I finish my exterior panels, that's when I can come back, and when I have a finished panel out here, I can machine the width, hand machine that, and do the door. You can see where there's a bunch of excess, but I'll just leave all that. I machined a little bit off there. There's around that upper bow area. Went ahead and got a lot of that off there because I didn't want it to interfere with my rubber strip here. But the next step is just to figure out, basically go around and clean it up just a little bit more. This is all really low, but it's all going to get a skim coat of finished Bondo. I had to make this width a little bit wider, which took 2 applications, but it wasn't too difficult. I want to keep it same as the other side. I left this open quite far because I want to basically bring the body back to the door, because I've got a clearance issue. When this door opens, it just clears this by 1/4 inch. And of course this looks wrong, but this will get machined back to about here to get my gap, so this is going to blend in. I can do most of this work with this door off. I can finish that up. But once I brought that gap forward, that allowed me to see exactly where my fender well, little fender hump here, is in relationship to that door too. So you can just get a better look at what you're going to have to do now that those gaps have been filled up. Here's the finished product as far as this side. Of course it's not finished, but it needs a final coat of primer on this, so I'm just going to wait till I do that right side door and it's ready for primer, and I'll basically be shooting quite a bit. Even the interior I'll be shooting some high build primer. But all this has already been done. The width's been done. I've actually leveled this panel out a little bit already, and a lot of work, but it's getting closer.